But we go to Morgantown. We go to West Virginia. Penn State versus West Virginia. Your thoughts on this game and the matchup in week 1?
Yeah, I tried to really sell myself on this, West Virginia fans, before anyone. You can get mad at Blake. Go ahead, get mad at Blake. Don't get mad at me because I did my notes.
I dug, mad at me.
Right. I dug through everything. I've been a supporter of yours. I really think that West Virginia is a contender in the Big 12. But just looking at this matchup between Penn State, I do think that there are some disparities in specific position groups. I will say, though, and I'm going to check the betting line in a quick second because I'm curious what the spread is. This game is going to be close and potentially down to the wire. Last year, I think this is the biggest driving force for this. Last year, we might forget, and West Virginia fans definitely don't forget, they ran up the score on them. With 6 seconds to go, they tried to score more points, and I believe they succeeded and put more points up on the board. They get them at home in Morgantown in West Virginia to start the season. They're going to be pissed. They're bringing back a lot of their core roster, a good bit of their offensive line, important pieces on their defense, key receivers, their running back room. They're bringing back guys that were there last year through a game that was pretty embarrassing. Again, to not get that respect from James Franklin, to have points thrown up on them at the end of the game the way that it was. They're going to come out pissed. They're going to scratch and claw until this game is over. So I know that that's not really a lot of like real analysis. I'm going to get into that stuff in a second as we continue this conversation. But I think that there is a real chip on their shoulder, and there already has been because there's comments being made by the West Virginia players who's then being responded by Dennis Sutton of Penn State. There's already chirping back and forth. There's drama building for this game, Blake, and I think that it's going to be a real heavy, not heavyweight battle, but just a real scratch and claw type of a battle between these two rivals.
Joe, how good was Drew Aller last year?
He was great against the bad teams that they played, and he played like shit against the good teams.
So was West Virginia a bad team?
Well, that was at the very beginning of the season when everyone was claiming they were dead in the water.
Can you just answer my question?
No, they weren't. They weren't a bad team, but at the beginning of the year last year, they were weak.
He was 21 of 28 for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns. By the way, Andy Kotelnicki, the new OC, is in the building for Penn State. Here's the thing that I think people are missing on when they look at this game. Joe, Garrett Green is a 53.1% passer. Now, the kid can run, and I will give him that he can run. Penn State has a lot of athletes on defense. And what they did last year and what I think that they'll do again this year, make Garrett Green beat you through the air. Because, Joe, when it came down to that, and C.J. Donaldson, I know, had 80 yards and a touchdown, when it comes down to what you need to do to win this game if you're Penn State, they're going to make Garrett Green throw the football on them. They're going to stack the box. They're going to go man-to-man on the outside. You have Kobe King, who is returning if you are the defense for Penn State. You talked about Dennis Sutton. But Dennis Sutton, Durant, and Abdul Carter all averaged or are combined all together, Joe, are around the 15 to 16 sack range. I just don't know if I see a world where James Franklin, who likes to play, get guys in the box, stop the run, play man-to-man on the outside, that Garrett Green, who was a below-average quarterback while he was throwing the football, is going to be able to lead West Virginia to a win. You say, well, Blake, it's at home. Joe, 53.1% completion percentage a year ago. Now, we have had a lot of pushback by West Virginia people and West Virginia fans. Oh, Blake's an asshole. He has no idea what he's talking about. Well, let me refresh you to all you Rudy Poos that were out there who were taking pot shots at me. Your quarterback was almost below average. Joe, throwing the football. Now, the kid can really run. Again, won't take it away from him. But, Joe, when you do the things that kid has done at times throwing the football, it would scare me if I'm a West Virginia fan. This is what Penn State is going to do. They are going to stack the box. They're going to make you throw the football and make you beat them that way. And, Joe, I don't know if I see a world that can happen. Here's another thing. I do think Drew Aller is going to take a better step under Andy Kotelnicki. I think Andy Kotelnicki is one of the best OCs that is, I say, top 10 OCs in the country. I think they're going to be better offensively. You know, listen to a lot of people around Penn State. Joe, the biggest thing coming out of Penn State to some extent is how Kotelnicki is getting playmakers the ball quickly in space. That was their biggest issue that they had a year ago, right? Hey, Coach Franklin, are you going to take deep shots? Can you get your playmakers the football outside of Allen and Singleton, your two really good running backs? Oh, by the way, Joe, they have also, too, Penn State has two really good running backs returning, just like West Virginia does. I just don't think that West Virginia is ready for the caliber of athlete that they're going to see in next week. That's why I'm going to lean Penn State here, because I think they'll stop the run, and I think they'll make Garrett Green beat them, and he's not going to be able to.
I don't disagree with the point that Penn State's going to win this game. I really do think that they will win, and it is, for me, it purely just comes down to not how good Penn State is at premier spots on their defense. I have been very wary of what's going to happen for their secondary. They had good depth, but they put three guys out into the NFL with Kalen King, with Daquan Hardy, and with Johnny Dixon. Those are three key positions that now need to be replaced. Their defensive line, though, is going to be scary good. Dennis Sutton could be a first-round pick. Abdul Carter is going to be a first-round pick as he's transitioning from linebacker to edge. I think those guys are going to create enough splash defensive plays to win them the football game. But I don't think it's one, totally fair to use the first game of the season last year when West Virginia started the season slow as context for why Drew Allard is going to kick their ass. I don't think that's fair
what about
context.
A whole season of Garrett Green being bad and being very inefficient in the passing game?
Okay, you're making it seem like he's like a bottom tier quarterback. Many who have watched him play acknowledge that he's better than his stats indicate. I'm not saying that he's a world beater.
Joe,
I'm not saying that he's an elite passer.
There is no dimension that Thanos could bring you to. That 53.1% completion percentage he's just better than some. Joe, get out of here with that. If Drew Allard was 53% completion percentage guy, you would say he was Tyler Van Dyke. You would say he was the Rudy Apua's quarterback.
I'm not hyping up Garrett Green to say that he's better than Drew Allard. That statement's not being said by me, but I think that you're underestimating how good he is. He finished his last two games during the regular season. He was well over 60% completion percentage. He had a couple rough games that drove down his completion percentage. He's not some like, and all. I also think that the context is missing here for the way that they play offensively. They are aggressive and they take a lot of deep shots, and some of those things don't always connect. I think that the way that his stats look are not an accurate depiction of who he is as a player and how this offense moves the football.
So then are you going to get on Neil Brown for that then, for being an inefficient play caller? Because, Joe, if it's not working through the air, then somebody's got to take the blame for 53.1%.
I wouldn't say it's inefficient play calling, because like most games they scored after TCU, after like week 4, they scored over 30 points in most games.
And TCU's not Penn State last year. TCU missed a bowl game.
I said after week 4, they started the season slow. Most would agree that they started the season really freaking slow.
And who did they play?
In the first 4 weeks of the year?
No, at the end, after those 4 weeks.
They lost to Houston, they lost to Oklahoma State, and then they went on a run beating UCF, BYU, Cincinnati, and Baylor.
So the bottom tier of the Big 12. I'm not trying to poo-poo on West Virginia. I'm not. I think that there'll be a solid Big 12 team. But, Joe, come on, man.
I'm not saying that West Virginia wins this game. I talked myself out of it. I did enough research to say that. But
if they're not going to win the game, that means that they're going to efficiently stop the run enough and make Garrett Green have to beat them through the air. So you're going to now have to pick a side of where you're going at. Because if they're going to win the game, one of those things have to give.
What do you mean I have to pick a side that I'm going at? The side that I'm picking is that this game is going to be closer than you're predicting here.
Okay.
It's going to be closer than 10 points. It's going to be closer than it's going to be a touchdown or less.
You're outside your box.
This team is way better than you think it is. It's much better than you think it is. This goes back to my whole point during the preview.
No, you're just so bad. You're so down on Penn State. Joe, you're not looking at the logic.
I'm justified in being down on Penn State. They put a shit ton of talent into the NFL. They departed a lot of important players. West Virginia's bringing back a ton of guys.
Joe.
Experience is important.
Okay, they
were a young team last year.
Okay, name what team I'm mentioning when I tell you this. Quarterback returns, Two premier running backs return. Your best edge.
What about their
rusher-
offensive line?
Hold on. God damn it. Your
What about their
best
offensive line?
Joe, are you really going to sit here and tell me that you think that West Virginia has a better offensive line than a team
They do. Ask anybody. Ask anybody. They're considered to be one of the best.
You
You said that Oklahoma State's offensive line was better. West Virginia's is much better than Oklahoma State's.
Okay, Oklahoma
So much
State,
better.
PFF has Oklahoma State as the number one win rate in the entire college.
Those are a bunch of fucking numbers. I don't just take data for what it is at face value. Those numbers are. They also have some kid at Jacksonville State as one of the highest graded guards.
Oh, and you know what? You're right. You know what? Andy Kotelnicki, which you have not brought up yet, means nothing.
I have been the biggest champion of Kotelnicki. I've been one of the biggest champions of it.
They have the better staff. They have the better defense that can stop the run. Joe, when you can go man-to-man on the outside and stack the box, you are going to be tough to beat.
You say that with such certainty. They have a completely new defensive backfield at corner. Their slot corner and both outside cornerbacks are new guys and a new defensive coordinator. We don't know what Tom Allen's going to be like. We don't.
We have a pretty damn good idea what Tom Allen's going to be like. Stop that.
I think that you're discounting this team. If this was at Penn State,
Penn State, who is a premier top 10 team at the current moment, is going to beat them.
I think that it is a fallacy that Penn State is a top 10 team. They are replacing a lot. I think that they are going to be good and competitive this year, but I don't think that they're as powerful as everybody thinks that they are. They're ranked number 8 in the country or wherever they were.
So then break down the game. Then what's going to happen? Because you can't, the way that I see what you're saying is you can't have both. Because, Joe, there's going to come a point, if you say Penn State wins by 10, okay, or within 10, there's going to be something that they do to stop them or score late or score in the second half when depth takes over. If they're going to win, they're going to do something to clearly over-prevail from West Virginia. What's that going to be?
Well, that over-prevailing, to get past the yelling that we're having, yeah, I agree. I think Penn State's run game is going to be extremely dynamic.
Okay, well then why were you talking to me about their offensive line then?
I'm just pointing out that there is a deficiency there.
So you said, well, Blake, who's got the better offensive line? And I asked you, well, how are they going to win the game? And you said because they're going to run the football. So what are you doing?
Stop. That I can point out the fact that their offensive line is weakened because they put out a kid in the first round and their starting center is gone. Two of their most important offensive linemen are gone. And I believe they had a third that was also drafted.
And did they not go in the portal and get one of the best right tackles in the portal?
You have criticized Michigan for replacing most of their starters. And
They're replacing
all of their starters.
Starters.
But they also went and grabbed one of the best guards in Josh Preeb to re-bolster that offensive line, and their O-line depth and recruiting is some of the best in the country.
Joe, when you're returning 60% of your offensive line, it's different than 100%. Do you know how the math works?
To get back to my point here, I think it's necessary to point those things out when having this conversation. But yes, if Penn State wins this game because Nick Singleton is an extremely explosive athlete that doesn't need perfect blocking in front of him, he is now being placed in an offense that, as you mentioned, knows how to activate guys in space and how to create space. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we don't come into this game and Drew Allar is a little bit better than last year just in his general game-to-game average, and if the reason why they win is just purely because of splash plays from Singleton. I think that is the real winner in this game, the real MVP of this game, and the guy that's going to take the huge next step forward. I'm not necessarily sold on the rest.
Here's another thing that you're not accounting for. What is West Virginia game planning against? Let me give you this. Penn State knows exactly what West Virginia is going to give them. Right? There's not a lot of staff turnover, not a lot of personnel turnover. What do you really know of what you should expect from Penn State offensively or defensively? Which they could.
You faced Kotelnicki in the Big 12.
No. Yeah, fair. But you're talking about going up against an Aussie in a new place. Systems change. Like, I'll give you an example. I'll use your team for an example. I heard that Notre Dame is going to use more 12 personnel at Notre Dame versus what they did at LSU. Mike Denbrock went more 4 wide than anybody in the country last year at times.
Yeah.
Personnel dictates that. What are you game planning off of? You have no idea what they're going to do. And I think that there could be situations where, and again, I don't think West Virginia is a bad team, but Joe, I think that Penn State might overwhelm them late, and it's going to be plus a 10-point game. I got them winning by 13 points here, covering the spread, but I feel like in the game it's going to feel like more of a separation.
What is the spread? Do you have it? It's a 10 points. Oh, I'm taking West Virginia to cover that. I think West Virginia covers.
The West Virginia fans in the chat really hate me right now.
I admittedly, I feel like you're not giving them a chance. I feel like you're not giving them a chance.
No, that's not true. I think here's what I think. If I'm going to say West Virginia wins, it's because there's too much turnover, okay, at Penn State, and Allard cannot pick things up quickly. But Joe, they're not going to be worse from a play calling aspect offensively. Like Josh Pate put this out the other day, or no, I think he quoted Ross Dellinger, so it might have been Dellinger. So forgive me of who published it. Joe, did you know that 60% of coaches moved around in the league last year or in college football last year? I think that the teams I think that the teams that like Penn State that have better overall staffs offensively will be better at that position. Now, Manny Diaz leaves, and Manny was a great DC for them. I think Andy Kotelnicki, from a play calling standpoint, is going to give West Virginia issues. I don't know if West Virginia has the athletes and the depth when it gets down in second half and you start running the football on them that they can overcome.
They've got more depth than
remember now. Penn State has recruited multiple top 10 classes.
Yeah,
multiple top 10 classes.
Penn State's also notorious for underdeveloping a lot of their guys. Penn State is notorious for underdeveloping top recruits. Ask anybody who from a draft analysis standpoint. This is a conversation I've had with tons of people that I highly trust their opinions.
Games in the last 3 years, but
but with the way that they recruit, they should be national title contenders.
No,
they don't develop their players.
They shouldn't. Joe, take Michigan out for just 1 second. Who have been your national champions the last 6 years?
Not beating the top teams is a problem.
Can you please for once answer my question?
SEC teams.
No, the teams that historically land top 5 recruiting classes over and over and over again. Michigan is the only team that has won a national title that didn't need that.
My point still stands.
Am I wrong?
Am I wrong? No,
Clemson
you're not.
You're the only other one, but they were in the top 7.
You're not wrong, but Penn State's recruiting has been at a very high level. It hasn't been.
They haven't cracked the top 7, though, Joe.
My point still stands, though. They have a lot of freakishly athletic guys that don't play to their true potential. They have a lot of guys that when they get to junior year, they stay stagnant right where they were. And I stand by that point because I watch so much goddamn film of these Penn State guys, and the opinion of that sticks for every single one of them. 3/4 of the way developed. So I spare me with the one team is vastly more deeper and more well-recruited than the other.
Well, They are.
Neil Brown has – I think that Neil Brown's a better coach than Franklin. I'm going to go as far as say that. I think that Franklin is extremely overhyped.
Okay, well, what is his natural rating?
What are Franklin's signature premier wins?
What are they? He won the Big Ten.
What year did he win the Big Ten? What year was that again?
I forget the year.
I'm trying to remember who he beat that year.
Forgive me. I forget the year.
Look, I'm not. I think that because of how favorable their schedule has been.
What has Neil Brown done? If you want to talk about accomplishments, please tell me what Neil Brown's done.
He hasn't been a head coach nearly as long as James Franklin has.
James Franklin getting to 9-3 at Vanderbilt is more than anything that Neil Brown has ever done.
What was West Virginia's record last year?
Joe,
they were 9-4.
Vanderbilt.
That is an
Plans are
accomplishment
built.
that he did that, obviously, but one is at a more premier program right now. One has far more resources.
Yeah, and Joe, when's the last time that they've really been national title contenders? We're blaming all of this on James Franklin. You're blaming
He's
all
the
of
head
this.
coach. He's the head coach. Who else am I supposed to
You know
blame?
what? I'm old enough to remember 6 months ago when a Penn State article came out that their fans hated NIL. Yeah, it's all on James Franklin that fans don't want to give an NIL.
They're doing fine. They're doing fine. Look, I stick by this.
No,
I don't.
you hate Penn State. You hate James
I have
Franklin.
no issues with Penn State. Stop making it seem like I have a bias. Why would I have a Penn State bias? I have no reason to have a Penn State bias.
I don't know, because maybe because they're close to New York, New Jersey, and you just hate Pennsylvania. I don't know.
That has nothing to do with any of this.
You think their pizza sucks? I don't know. Oh, I know why. I know why.
Why?
The state of Pennsylvania produces your favorite baseball team in the major leagues, and they've been stinking.
Yeah, that's real great deep analysis there. West Virginia is closer in talent than you think that they are.
No,
I think that this game being at home is extremely.
Can I ask you a question before we move on?
Yeah.
What happens if Penn State stacks the box and stops the run?
Trust Garrett Green to make plays. If he can connect on
53% completion percentage, you trust him to make plays.
He needs to step up to the plate. But just like we're giving Drew Allard grace in his second season starting, Garrett Green has a big arm too. I can give a little bit of grace to Garrett Green to improve too.
Okay, now hold on now. Drew Allard wasn't that bad throwing the football. Joe, there's bad and then there's really bad.
I've watched that kid play, and he's a very gifted player, but he makes some errant throws.
Some very errant throws. And you know what? I know you talk about that secondary being replaced. I don't disagree with you. Joe, Penn State's talented enough that if you make errant throws on them like that, they're going to pick the ball off. You cannot do that. All right.
I'd rather have the young team than the one that pushed out a bunch of guys to the NFL. Or a team that was young last year.
Loud and wrong. All right.
That is more loud and right. Stink. Let's get to this game now. I'm sure that we're going to start yelling about this North Dakota State game.
I'm not going to yell with you over Colorado.
This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.